What's up fellow gamers, it's time for another epic game review, and for now it's Convergence, a League of Legends story. A League of Legends universe continues to evolve, following Arcane and couple of solo champion titles. Convergence, a League of Legends story soul of a light day, a story-driven adventure that takes the Ekko deeper. As before, the authors decided to play with form and content, offering a radically different game in comparison with the original source. Ekko, one of the champions of League of Legends, got his own history. As you know, he lives in Zaun and regularly creates various invitations, including those related to time manipulation. In Convergence, Zaun is threatened by a new threat from the Zaun clan, which of course Ekko will have to confront. And it won't be easy, even with her own limitations and time management. To say more would already be a spoiler, so alas, this will have to stop. However, Convergence is primarily a platformer, so there's more than enough topics for discussion in the next context of gameplay. Convergence is already, as mentioned, is an action platformer with an emphasis on movement and combat. It's better to dwell on each other of components in more detail. Let's start with the platformer. The developers at Double Stellar made sure that moving through Zaun was interesting enough and greatly diversified Ekko's arsenal of moves. If at first he can only run, jump and roll, then by the end of the passage the hero will easily make charges in the air, teleport to opponents and special points, run along the walls and whatnot. Together with the functionality of rewinding time, we get a kind of Prince of Persia in 2D. The player needs a decent accuracy and timing for a successful passage. Mistakes are punishable but reversible, especially since Ekko's stock of rewinds is higher than the collect from the past. Their starting value is already 8 on normal difficulty, plus there are many ways to increase their number in Convergence. As for the battles, here are the authors did not reinvent the wheel. Ekko has melee and ranged attacks, which he uses with the Pivotal Clock and Z Drive respectively. As the game progresses, the champion can learn new moves that increase his arsenal of attacks, such as the ability to land a falling strike or charge improvised weapons for the damage. Those familiar with the genre won't have to learn all over again here. Melee attacks are done on the square X combined with the stick movement, and ranged attacks are on the triangle or Y. To add variety to the fights, the authors introduce jumps and dodges at the start. While the skills discovered over time expand, Ekko's capabilities not only when moving. For example, the hero can locally slow down time, perform a temporal explosion that knocks opponents around, or dash towards an enemy, dealing good damage in the process. In general, despite certain one-button fights can be quite exciting, which is especially helped by the variety of opponents. In total, there are more than 50 different enemies in the game, ranging from small and almost harmless to more formidable and rather reminiscent of mini-bosses. The authors managed to manage such a number, including the good old way of repainting. Some opponents naturally differ from each other only in the color of the skin and the spongy, and do not really try to diversify their attack roster, with rare exceptions. By itself, the analogy with the opponents of the times of 8 and 16-bit consoles suggests itself. However, this is not a significant disadvantage. Convergence skillfully juggles opponents in order to constantly surprise the player with new situations. What is nice, the enemies still require a unique approach. Someone attacks at a certain timing and you have to dodge such blows. Someone hits the area forcing you to dodge damage by jumping, and someone throws bombs that deal unblockable damage, or conducts a remote attack on the ground, forcing again to seek salvation in the air. All this at a decent speed, which also adds a challenge to the game and forces you to constantly look for the best way of the situation. If there are problems with this, you can always turn back time and try again. It is still worth saying a few words about the plot. As expected, Ekko's story revolves around time travel. It would be strange if the Time Conqueror suddenly did something else. And somehow it so happened historically that there are not a huge number of plots in which a temporal twist occupy an important place, and many of them are similar to each other. Convergence was no exception. Gamers familiar with such stories will almost certainly figure out the central intrigue in the first half hour, and the remaining time we will look at the development of the story with a mixture of the boredom and fatigue. The adventure doesn't save the fan service either. As it was announced in advance,